So I think in the 1960s or 1970s, a local grazier found some footprints here. The footprints were of a herd of small 2-foot dinosaurs, and they were being tracked as they were drinking water in a gully by a theropod, a 4-ton meat-eating dinosaur. And within that seconds of them being stalked, they have left these footprints, these trackways. And you can see where the heavier dinosaur, the 4-ton dinosaur, is just slowly walking because the footprints are quite deep. And then he started to pick up speed and his trajectory is forward. His footprints aren't as deep, and which is now rock, which would have then been sand. So let's go and have a look at Lark Quarry at the jump up in Winton. So I've come here to Lark Quarry on the jump up in central Queensland. Central Queensland used to be an inland sea, so there used to be a lot of water. And where we are at the jump up, clearly the earth is a little higher. So what I did was I bought the 2-day pass, or the 2 pass, one here for Lark Quarry and one over for the Winton Dinosaur Capital of Australia experience, which is about 20 k's the other side of Winton on the road to Longreach. So I booked in for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning for that. The road to Lark Quarry is about 115 kilometres from Winton. I'm going to say west of Winton, towards Junda. And about 60 or 70 kilometres of that road is paved and the other is not. And it goes in segments of fairly rough, unsealed roads, of which some I was going about 10 k's and some I was going about 30 to 40 k's. I left Barcaldine this morning just before 7, so I got to Longreach just after 8. I got to Winton just after 10, and it's after 2 now. So it took me about 3 hours to drive from Winton to Lark Quarry. As I say, over half of it is unsealed, and so I had to do it fairly slowly. It's the first time my car has been tested like this, and she is 8 years old. Fabulous. I've come to about 100 metres just above the Quarry Stampede site, which is down there under that building. And it is the dinosaurs running in that direction. So I guess you can see where the water would have gone around this ridge. And that'll be the direction that the dinosaurs will be running in when we go down and have a look.
If there was a difference between the preservation of the fossil, if there was a lot of damage happening to it, because basically even exposing these footprints to the air, exposing this rock to the air, was basically chemically unbalanced them. Because back 95 million years ago, the very air that was around us was very different, the chemical composition. So they wanted to see how much that was affecting the fossils. But then through those 50 years, they realized that there was lots of other damage happening to the footprints as well. So they changed their minds and they decided to leave it as a sort of safety net, basically. And if anything happened to these footprints, there's plenty more under there. There's plenty more under the back of the hill there as well. That's just where they decided to stop digging at that point in time, probably a little bit due to funding as well. But also the thing was, there's so many. There's over 3,300 footprints here, so there's plenty to do. Any research that they want to do at this point in time, and if they want to dig them up in the future, they can. So it's up to future generations to decide there's any research they want to do, they can dig those footprints up there. Scartopus from Saurosaurs. So Saurosaurs were a type of, obviously, dinosaur, type of carnivorous dinosaur called theropods. They're animals that ran on their two legs, much like a T-Rex, but obviously a much smaller version. So these animals probably about the size of a chicken. And probably can tell why Glenn Seymour thought he was looking at bird footprints, because it's a very bird-like footprint there. So with these Saurosaurs, obviously these are the most common footprints that we have, about 60% of them. And what you're looking for is the sharper, more pointy toes. So you can see the much more triangular shaped toe. Reason for that was these guys, even though they were so small, they were still carnivorous. So they had very needle sharp claws on their toes, so when they put their foot down in the mud, left that very pointy toe mark. Now the other kinds of dinosaurs we have are plant-eating dinosaurs known as Omnithopods. So these guys were a bit bigger, going from about the size of a sort of plains turkey, like a sort of brush turkey, to the size of an emu. And what you're looking at is sort of those footprints there. So they've got a much wider foot. They've also got a very long middle toe compared to their other toes. So if you look at these ones, all their toes are very sort of evenly sized. This one, it's got a very long middle toe. What you'll also notice is it's a very round toe. So these guys, they had needle sharp claws. These ones, they're plant eaters, so they had more blunt claws. So when they put their foot down, it leaves that much rounder toe mark. They're basically drag marks. So before the stampede happened, we had a big flood that came through, probably came through the forest. Now the forest was sort of where the car park and Seymour Quarry is now. So as the water's flowing through the forest, it picks up debris, branches, things like that. And as that stuff is flowing in the water, there's bits sticking out and they're dragging through the mud. So they leave these long lines in the mud as they're flowing down. And we know it happened before we have this timeline, because basically you've got footprints in the drag marks themselves, in the lines. So we know it happened before the stampede. It's pretty cool, because of how their foot was actually put down into the ground. So what you notice is that you only got toe marks from these animals. You don't have the heel, you just have the toes. So they're on the balls of their feet. And if you think about it, us humans, we do the exact same things. If you watch the Olympics and things, all the sprinters, they're running on the balls of their feet. That's how most animals run, and that's how dinosaurs ran as well. So we can see that these guys are running, they're stampeding, which is obviously why it's called Dinosaur Stampede. But what you notice about big old banjo here are Australovenator wintonensis. So back in the 70s, they thought, they had this massive dinosaur, sort of about the size of a T-Rex. But now what we think is that it's actually a much smaller dinosaur, probably only about 1.5 meters tall, probably weighed about 300-400 kilos. If you've seen Jurassic Park, you've seen the velociraptors. That's the sort of dinosaur you're looking at. Very closely related to those velociraptors. And that's what we think left these footprints here. And you'll actually see the specimen of that guy at the museum tomorrow when you go. So yeah, obviously we've got 11 footprints of his going all the way down the walkway. Starts off walking, as you know. You've got the heel of this guy as well. So he's walking along fairly slowly. But we have a bit of a story that's sort of developing. So as he's walking along, I'll just turn the lights off because it's a bit easier to see. But he's walking along, but what you might notice is the distance between each footsteps starts to get closer together. So he's slowing down. What you notice from footprints number 4 and 5 and even 6, you've got all this mud that's been pushed up in front of the footprint. So if you think about it, when you're walking on the beach, you slow down, push up stuff in front of you. So that's what he's done here. He started to slow down. And we think this is where he actually triggered the stampede. So these animals are running towards him. He gets up to somewhere here, and a couple of things happen. So this footprint number 6 here is actually a very interesting footprint. There's a lot of things that have happened in this one right here. Okay, so number 6 here, very interesting footprint. You look closely, you got 3 toes. But if you look even more closer, at the middle toe, we have different claw marks. So you have one here, but we also have another one there, and potentially third one in the middle as well. So you got 3 claw marks from the one toe. but we know for a fact that he's only got one claw on each toe. So yeah, he's done a bit of a sort of shuffle. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, as you know, he's changing direction. But there's also some evidence to say that he might have tripped over a smaller dinosaur. So if you look just past the footprint, what you got here is a smaller dinosaur that's put its foot down, put the brakes on really hard, and you might be able to see those lines in the ground where he's actually slipped and he's skidded towards this animal's foot, to the predator's foot. So it's skidded, he slipped, but he survived because he's put his hand down here. He's actually run off in this direction, this way. Pretty cool. So that's footprint number 7 there, where he's almost tripped over this smaller dinosaur. So he's put his other foot down to keep his balance because he's almost forward. Put his other foot down to keep his balance, and then he's landed pretty heavily there on his other foot. You can see he's put a lot of weight down there, and then he started running. So you can see footprints 9, 10, and 11. There's a much smaller footprint compared to those ones down there because you don't have the heel. All you have is just the toe marks. And then at the very last point here, number 11, you've got the footprint there, but what you got is also this mud. A whole heap of mud that's been pushed up behind the footprint. So what you can say there is he probably went to do something. Now we don't know exactly what he did because as you might know, we've lost the rest of the footprints, but we have this stuff here that's been pushed up behind it, so we can say that he did something there. Maybe he pounced, maybe he leapt, maybe he just pushed off into a much faster sprint, but we can say that that's evidence of something happened there. Because you think about you're walking on sand, you jump or you kick off, you're going to push stuff up behind you. So he's put a lot of force down there to push up all that mud behind him. Research that's already been done with tracking individual animals. So you track an animal, the researchers that are doing this, paleontologist by the name of Dr. Matt White, what he's doing, he's got this whole area scanned on his computer. It's a digital scan, and what he'll do is mark it out on his computer because it's a bit easier there, and then he'll come back here and do it in real life as well. We'll follow an individual animal. So each box is a footstep, and each set of boxes is a different animal. So you can obviously, with things like that, you can measure the stride length, and then you can work out speeds as well. So we think, with the smaller ones, the saurosaurs, the chicken-sized dinosaurs, they're probably running between about 9 and 12 kilometers an hour. As you go up in size to the larger ornithopods, the plant eaters, getting up about the size of an emu, you're looking at about between sort of 18 to 21, 22 kilometers an hour for these larger ones at a full sprint. The predator himself, he was walking at about 8 or 9 kilometers an hour, but we think at a full sprint, full tilt, hitting upwards of 35 to 40 kilometers an hour easily. Yep, just around there, what we've got are some large ornithopod footprints. So larger versions of the plant eaters here is over there. So those are very large, means a large ornithopod. Largest ornithopod species in Australia, as you know, is a Mataborosaurus. So we think that animal there would have been Mataborosaurus. Now the interesting thing about this animal here is that, for one thing, we think it came through before the stampede. So we call it lucky. Because if it was here when the stampede happened, it would have probably been lunch. But came through before. We know that, for one thing, the mud looks like it was a lot softer and a lot wetter when that animal walked through. So the mud hadn't had time to dry after this first flood. So these footprints here, they look like the mud was a lot drier. That stuff there, it looks like it was a lot softer. And if you think about, you put your foot down in wet mud, it sort of just squelches in. That's sort of what happened here. It's also walking, so it's not running like these animals are. And it's just cruising along, and honestly, it's going off in one direction, then it turns a different way. It's just sort of meandering along.